online?
It is starting up right now. So give me just maybe 10 seconds here to verify that it's
You got it.
It is working, so we're good to go. And we have
Okay.
4.
Well, with that, we'll go ahead and welcome everyone to the Utah Telecommunication Open Infrastructure Agency, or the UTOPIA board meeting. It's great to see everyone here this morning, and we want to welcome you, wish you a happy Valentine's Day. It's not too late if you forgot to get flowers or cards or any of those things. I'd like to welcome you here this morning. I understand that we do have some new members of the board, and we would like to introduce them. Maybe if you could take just a quick second and say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself. We'd like to start with Doug Hill from Murray. Doug, are you here?
Yes, hello everybody. I am the Chief Administrative Officer for Murray City. This is my second stint on the UTOPIA board. I was on the board, I don't know, about 8 years ago. Represented the city back at that time. So happy to be here and look forward to participating. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you. And then next we have Zach Bloxham from Layton.
Yeah, I'm Zach Block. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Zach Bloxham. I'm a councilman from Layton, so excited to be a part of the Utopia board. Something that our city benefits from greatly, and happy to see it expanding and doing what I can to help. So
Awesome, thank you, Zach. And then we have Alden Farr from Brigham City.
Yes, thank you. Current city council member, was a council member way back when Utopia first started, and supported that, and glad to see it's moving forward, and appreciate being on the board. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. And then are there any other visitors that are here that are not members of the board that would like to just say hello?
Jeff, this is Sean from Tremonton, and I was just going to introduce you to an alternate that we have now assigned to the Utopia board. So I'm the primary representative, but Mark Christensen, who is the assistant city manager, he's also going to be attending and participating from time to time, and maybe we'll both join, and just, one of us will vote. But anyways, I wanted to introduce you to Mark.
Excellent. Thank you and welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Yep, I'm here.
Very good. Anyone else? Okay, well, very good. As was mentioned.
Mr. Chair, this is Laurie Harvey. I wanted to introduce Ben Bailey. He is joining us from our auditor's office, Kennington and Christensen.
Okay, wonderful. Welcome, Ben. Thank you. As was mentioned earlier,
for meeting purposes, it's an open meeting, and so just want to confirm no one else is in the room with me except for Krista. So just for the recording and recognizing who's in attendance.
Excellent.
Sorry, keep going.
Thank you, and hi, Krista. Glad you're there. As was mentioned earlier, Wayne Pyle, the chair, is out of town. And so I will be conducting the meeting today. My name is Jeff Lamson. I'm a city council member and representative from Orem. So with that, we'll move on to the next item of business, which is an approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from December 13th, 2021?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Okay, and a second?
Second, Matt Dahl.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you, Adam and Matt. Okay, we will now move into financial audit report for fiscal year 2021.
A motion.
We need to capture the vote on that.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes from the previous meeting, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, and now we'll move on to the financial audit of fiscal year 2021 presented by Kennington and Christensen.
Thank you. And if you don't mind, I would like to present some of the financial highlights for fiscal year 2021 before we turn it over to Ben. I will mention that we got the draft of the UTOPIA financials just last week. I haven't yet gone in and updated the management's discussion and analysis on there, so you'll see a lot of blanks in there. Ben was gracious enough to allow us to present the draft as this at this meeting. We still have some work to do. I'm sure they still have some questions for me. I'm out of the office until the end of this week, but we both, Ben and I believe that we can have the final draft out by February 29. Some of the difficulties this year were we had a changeover in staff. Our treasurer resigned, and we were making significant changes in the fixed assets schedule, moving the life of the assets, conduit and fiber, from 25 years to 40 years. So there was some work involved there. That in combination with changes in the staff caused us. We're almost there. Some highlights for fiscal year 2021 for UTOPIA. Average monthly recurring revenue increased by about 12% from 574,000 in fiscal year 20 to 645,000 in fiscal year 2021. A lot of this is due to the growth of the subscriber rate, the growth in subscribers on the Idaho Falls network. Idaho Falls is a UTOPIA project. We spent nothing to be in Idaho Falls. It was a consulting agreement. The revenue from that agreement comes in the form of a percentage of the service provider revenue. So that's been a real help to UTOPIA. The number of subscribers on the combined network, so UIA UTOPIA combined, increased by 29% in fiscal year 21 from 30,993 to 40,029. Just for reference, the number of UTOPIA subscribers is right about 10,000. The rest of those subscribers are UIA, other than the increase in Idaho Falls subscribers. Operating revenue for UTOPIA increased by 26% from $12 million to just over $15 million. And as I mentioned, Idaho Falls, which is a UTOPIA project, is the fastest growing UIA UTOPIA City network. We had 1,800 customers on the Idaho Falls network as of June 30th, 2021.
Which now we're over 3,000, so give you an idea how quickly that's growing.
Yeah. On the next slide, I've presented the four-year comparison of the UTOPIA balance sheet. Current assets, 2.9 in 2018, about 2.9 in 2021. They vary a little bit, but usually right around $3 million. Non-current assets, this is mostly fixed assets, net of accumulated depreciation. As you know, most of the growth has been in UIA. So as these assets continue to depreciate, the net amount reported on the balance sheet is going to decrease. Deferred outflows is a tricky one and a little bit difficult to explain. The biggest portion of this is the value of the swap agreement that we have in place. Were we to pay off or refund the UTOPIA debt right now, we would have to pay Bank of America and KeyBank, a total of about $84 million. So the value of that swap agreement in 2020 was about $110 million. It dropped in 2021 to $84 million. That agreement was put in place when the UTOPIA debt was refunded, and it changes the debt from a variable rate to a fixed rate. This is one of the biggest reasons we can't refund the UTOPIA debt and basically need to just continue to pay on the regular debt service schedule. But it shows that our assets went down from 179 million in 2020 to 150 million in 2021. And that really is just the probably $25 million difference in the value of that swap agreement. what offsets that is the long-term liabilities. In the middle of that next section, you'll see that long-term liabilities decreased from 455 million to 441. And again, we show the swap agreement as an asset and it's offset as a long-term liability in the liabilities section of the financial statement. So total assets, 150 million at the end of 2021. Total liabilities, 448 million at the end of 21, resulting in a net position of negative 298, 238. And total liabilities and net position balancing with total assets. Utopia gets kind of a double whammy on liabilities, as we record the debt owed on the Utopia bonds. As you're all keenly aware, the debt service on those bonds is paid from the sales tax pledge of the cities. So each year, we're mostly making interest payments on the Utopia debt, but we are adding to the note payable to the cities. So there's not much we can do to get out of that cycle. And we encourage people who are interested in Utopia UIA to look at the UIA financial statements rather than Utopia financial statements. On the next,
much happier news on that side of the thing.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we're making really great progress at Utopia from a cash flow perspective. That idea that Utopia can continue to pay more and more each year, but when you just look at it from a financial statement perspective, every time a city makes a payment on that, that's now a liability on Utopia's side. And so even though there's great progress being made, there's a huge hole here, obviously. So the context is important. And when you look at both projects, Utopia and UIA together, to see what's happening financially, it's making fantastic progress. And every year we expect to come back, be able to pay more and more of the debt obligations for the first phase. But the idea of like, hey, when does this all go to zero and we pay the cities back every dollar? That's a long time out. I actually think that's in our future. If you look at the trends that are happening, they're all very, very good and very, very strong. But this is a big hole. That swap situation with the original debt on the Utopia bonds is a terrible situation. I wish we could go back in time and undo that or restructure it or something like that. But like Larry mentioned, it's a situation. So anyways, back to Larry.
Yeah, on the next page, or in the next slide, we have, let's see. Yeah, on that one, Roger. Or on the revenue, if you'll jump to the Utopia revenues and expenditures, the 4-year comparison, thank you. Operating revenues have increased from 8.4 million in 2018 to 15 million in 2021. Some of this is that the reason for this is UIA pays Utopia each year based on number of connections. It pays for the one-time provisioning of new subscribers. It pays for field services for UIA connections. So as UIA revenue grows, the amount that they pay to Utopia and that Utopia recognizes as revenue is going to increase. Operating expenses. I broke out depreciation from operating expenses, but those have grown from 8 million in 2018 to 13 million in 2021. Depreciation. We took the advice of a board member last year and looked at extending the life of conduit and fiber. For years, those have been depreciated ever since 2002. Those were depreciated over a 25-year life. As we realized that the life of the conduit and fiber was much longer than 25 years, we extended the life for depreciation purposes out to 40 years. I wanted to be somewhat conservative. Some of the industry industry is actually depreciating at over 50 years. We went with 40, and that's made a difference in the depreciation expense. It was 5.2 million, 5 million, and then 4.9 million this year. By making that change in the life of our assets, depreciation expense is 3.3 million. We feel like this more closely matches the reality of the expense each year, depreciation of those assets. Not much change in non-operating revenues and expenditures. And the bond interest and fees actually dropped a little bit in fiscal year 2021. This is because the note payable to the cities interest accrues at the PTIF rate. And the PTIF rates for fiscal year 2021 were pretty abysmal. So interest expense for 2021 was a little lower than it was for 2020. The net decrease then in net position for fiscal year 21 is a decrease of 15.7 million. And again, the impact of the change in depreciation made a significant difference there.
Yeah, and I think we're still being very conservative there. I mean, if you just conceptually go back and say, well, the oldest networks we built were in Linden and Orem. Those were the first places we put fiber in the ground. Fiber is still good, the conduit is still good, and I could actually make an argument that it's worth more now than it was when we installed it, because it costs more to install fiber now than it did back then. And so do we expect another 20 years, 30 years, 40 years of life out of those? Yes, there's not been any significant deterioration of the conduits and the fiber cables, that stuff, it really lasts forever. The part of it that does need to be replaced is the electronics. So we've made a lot of upgrades to, in fact, pretty much all of the electronics have been swapped out a few times. We're on depending on what part of the network you're talking about, we were either on the third or the fourth generation of the technology that's been replaced. And so that's happening. And so what we have in Orem and Linden and the oldest parts of the network is completely great and updated and modern. And that long-term asset of the fiber and conduit should be good for another, like I said, probably another 30, 40, 50 years. So a 40-year depreciation cycle on anything that's going in new is still very conservative.
Okay, on the next slide, I just have a bar chart to show the comparison over the last 4 years. Operating revenues has increased fairly steadily, as well as operating expenses. You can see the decrease in depreciation expense for fiscal year 2021. Bond interest and fees, the slight change based on the PTIF rates. Total revenues has been consistently growing, a little bump in 2021, mostly from Idaho Falls. And then total expenditures, again, this includes depreciation, so it dropped a little bit for fiscal year 2021. That's all I mentioned that the financial statement that was attached is a draft. So we're hoping that'll be done by the 29th. And unless you have questions, I'll give the mic to our auditor, Ben Bailey.
Okay, so I appreciate the opportunity to present the draft here to you today. We conducted our audit to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatement, and we don't anticipate any modifications to that when the final report is issued. So we expect a clean opinion. For the internal controls that we've looked at and went through, we're not required by the standards to form an opinion on those. However, we do generally point out anything we see. Last year, there was one finding related to internal controls, and we don't anticipate any this year. And that's the same with the compliance areas we've tested in state compliance. We don't expect any findings with what we've tested there. So as Lori mentioned, the change in the depreciation, which we're in agreement with that. So that's one of the estimate changes you'll see in the report too. We didn't have any difficulties working with Lori's always great. Working with her staff's always great. It's just the timing thing that, we had issues on both sides. So we do expect to have it issued, like Lori said, by the end of next week, the 25th. So are there any questions for me on this?
So just procedurally, does the board need to meet again to review the final audit documents, or tell us how that works, Roger? Are we approving anything today? I wouldn't assume so since it's in draft form, so.
Right, there's no action needed on it today.
Okay.
So we'll get a final report, and then, I don't know, do we approve the audit, or we just?
We just receive it and hear it is what I understood, but does that sound correct?
Right, and there's no formal action required by the board. So once we have those final documents, we will send that out to all of the board members.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, thank you for that report. We'll look forward to receiving that information when that's available. We'll move on now to the election of Utopia board officers. Do we have a motion for that nomination, or do we have actually some nominations?
Mr. Chair, I would move, this is Zach from Layton City, I would move that we nominate and approve the current Utopia board officers as presently constituted, with the addition of Matt Dahl as third vice chair.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Krista, would you run us through a roll call vote on this?
Oh, sorry, you're muted for that.
Yes, Adam Cowie.
Aye.
Matt Dahl.
Yes.
Sean Warnke.
Yes.
Councilmember Farr.
Yes.
Doug Hill.
Yes.
Councilmember Meekum.
Yes.
Councilmember Bloxham.
Yes.
Jason Sant.
Yes.
Todd Christensen.
Yes.
Nicole Cottle.
Yes.
And Councilmember Lamson.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, and welcome Matt to the board as the third vice chair, and everyone else will carry on. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Now we will move to a Utopia financial update by Lori Harvey, the Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you. While Roger is bringing up those slides on the packet, I wanted to mention that we do have a new treasurer on board. He started last Monday. His name is Aaron Shirley, and he's the former finance director for Santaquin City. He has an MPA from Brigham Young University. He's a data analyst, and he has some really good experience. So we're thrilled to have him on board. He's only been here about a week, and he's already made a difference.
Excellent.
So,
well, welcome, Aaron.
Yeah, and we're fully staffed now in the finance department. This graph shows recurring revenue for the two systems combined, Utopia and UIA. Utopia is the blue line that shows that we're moving between $500,000 and $1 million per month. Again, this is increasing gradually, and with the growth of the Idaho Falls subscribers, this will continue to grow. The red line is UIA. There was a sizable increase in recurring revenue in December of 2021. It leveled off in January of 22, but that's okay. Some of this is timing when revenue is billed, and that's not a drop that you see. If anything, it's just a leveling off, and we expect to see that increase again in February. The next slide shows the 12-month moving average of the increase in recurring revenue, again, for both entities. It's comfortably between $40,000 and $50,000 month over month now. It wasn't too long ago that we were celebrating that revenue was growing at an increase of $20,000 month over month. So that was back in even in 2018, we were at 20,000. So you can see the sizable increase in the revenue for both networks over the last year or so. And then the final graph, again, I understand this is a Utopia meeting, but we want to show you the success and growth at UIA. The blue line represents UIA revenue. The solid and the dotted lines represent monthly debt service on the outstanding bonds issued by UIA. The difference between monthly recurring revenue and total debt service is, looking at the graph, the widest that it's ever been. We do have 3 bond issuances that are imminent, a partnership with Santa Clara City and a partnership with Cedar Hill City. Those we anticipate closing in March, and then issuance of approximately $30 million in general UIA debt. So that debt service line will jump a bit, but we're staying comfortably ahead of that. And all of this will benefit Utopia. So any questions on that report? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lori. We'll now move to a network update by Roger Timmerman, our Executive Director.
Yep. Just to make a couple comments on those previous charts. While UIA has become a much bigger entity from a investment, debt, and revenue position than Utopia has. We refer to both of them as Utopia Fiber, but just that context, the Utopia only ever did about $185 million of bonds. Obviously, with interest and the structure of that isn't ideal, ends up being a pretty big expense over time. But at UIA, we've done $400 million plus of debt, but we also have partnerships with projects where they came to the table with money, like Woodland Hills, they paid for their own. Idaho Falls, they're paying for their own. Bozeman, they're paying for their own. Brigham City was actually a separate thing, so the city did its own in a portion of that project. So at UIA, we have a lot more project out there, and correspondingly, we see more revenue growth in future on that side of the thing. However, the partnership of the two entities is mutually beneficial, so you see Utopia does have opportunity to grow its revenues among all of this, and then we find more opportunity for UIA's growth to offset expenses at Utopia. So each year we kind of come back and restructure the agreements and pricing between the two entities to strike a good balance of benefit, and that's how the future of Utopia actually looks bright, despite looking at the financial statements of today can look kind of dreary. So anyways, with that, Idaho Falls has been probably the greatest growth of revenue for Utopia, adding a couple hundred customers on there every month. We don't get all of the money for that because the city has to pay for its debt up there on that project, but we do get revenue for every customer on that partnership, yet we're out nothing. We haven't invested any money or taken any debt for that project. Similarly, we've entered into an agreement with Bozeman Fiber, now branded as Yellowstone Fiber. They issued a $65 million bond for that project and closed on it. So we expect that project is in construction right now, and we're the partner to make it happen and oversee the design and just the process of having that. But we have revenue that we get from every customer there. And so we expect that to become maybe the fastest growing of the Utopia and UIA cities at some point, as that one's going to move faster because they did do it in one lump sum. In Idaho Falls, it was like, let's do one footprint and let's do another one and another one slowly. They still haven't greenlit the whole city. But even with the pace that they're growing, it's been very good for Utopia financially. So we have different ways of growing and expanding in the future, both in our own projects, but also in partnership with others out there to generate revenues and pay off debts and improve the overall position financially of both entities. So things look good. I wanted to just kind of briefly pull up our great report. So everyone on this call would normally have received this report, but we have a couple of changes. So if you haven't gotten a subscriber report from me by email, please let me know, and then I'll make sure you get on our distribution list for that. But what we have is this report. I can find the right sheet here, where we give you some high-level stats, highlight, and also some highlighting of what's going on. So we have added Bozeman, Cedar Hills, and Santa Clara to the construction queue. You know, we are building very, very actively in lots of cities. So these are the ones that are done in this cell, where we consider them substantially complete. There might be little pockets here and there, but those are cities that have essentially citywide fiber to the home availability. We are actively building all of these cities. That's a lot. So we are very, very busy in those cities. These are cities where we have some connectivity. So we have schools and businesses, state and county facilities on the network. On that note, UETN, the Utah Education Telehealth Network, just awarded their bids for schools for this next round, or the latest round. We were the #2 winner behind CenturyLink, and that was mostly based on just a lot of the stuff being bid was outside of our territory in cities that were far away, or we would have had millions of dollars worth of construction to get to them. But where we had our network, we did very, very well and got 80 awards from them. So we're very happy with that. That's more than Comcast, more than Zayo, more than many of the other providers out there, despite us generally being limited to, you know, just some of these cities along the Wasatch Front. And we really don't have a statewide network, although we keep getting bigger and bigger. So we're pretty happy with how things have gone. In this, we also report on take rates. Each city, there's a report in aggregate, a page in the report that shows the aggregate of subscriber growth. Obviously really excited to be at that 45,000 threshold. Again, I said maybe I get rid of this ridiculous beard when we hit 50,000. I might have to do it before then. It's driving me nuts. But anyways, you know, we continue to expand the availability. You can see on how cities trend against each other in these charts. From a take rate perspective, we really look at things residentially because other addresses kind of skew things weird. But residentially, you can see how many customers we have and what take rates by city look like. Obviously, any city where we're building, it's a little bit unfair to look at their take rate because we may have lots of addresses where we just made them available, but they haven't had a chance to sign up. But we do really well in any cities where we have built it and finished it and have had a couple of years to sell and market. Those cities were all up in the 30 plus. Actually, I think we're over 40% in all of the sales mature cities. Ones with the low take rates are ones where we've been building recently. So anyways, all of you then would have access to your city-specific charts that kind of gives you those stats. So feel free to share those with your councils or others. We don't really consider those, you know, private or proprietary or anything, although we don't really publish them widely. But feel free to use those. If there's any enhancements or other questions you have, like what about this and what about this, if you want things added into our reports, please let us know. And we are working on an improved Tableau-based reporting system that gives better graphs. And but for now, this is a lot of data. It can be helpful to you, and everything's trending really well. So, anyways, that's a update on the network and the growth. Again, as we grow things generally at UIA and Utopia, that does benefit both entities. So that's where we see some relief. And then the overall strategy is get this darn thing built out. That's the top priority. Of the original member cities, we only have a little bit left to do. We'll be finishing this summer. That includes Orem. There's a little bit left in Orem, a little bit left in Murray, a little bit left in West Valley City, maybe a lot left. I mean, it's such a big city that the part that's left in West Valley is almost as big as a lot of the other cities, but we're doing a lot of construction there, so it'll get wrapped up spring, summertime. And so we're really excited. That's a big milestone we've all been waiting for, is to say we are done with the original member city build outs. And then obviously we have all these partner city projects that are in the queue as well. So there's no downtime here. No one sleeps anymore. You know, we're all very, very busy, but it's we got a great team, great partners. Unfortunately, Laurie, maybe we drove her to the cliff, and so she's retiring on us. But she's been fantastic, and we'll have a new CFO in the near future. But we keep trying to convince her to stay. It's not because we're killing her, though, I don't think, but she has said that it's probably the most difficult job she's had. So, but it's good stuff. It's all good problems. We are busy because demand is high, and we are growing and adding customers and taking advantage of the demand and opportunities in front of us. And with that, we are able to improve the financial position of Utopia. Each year, we're coming back and taking a bigger chunk of the debt. Obviously, well, many of you may not be aware of the debt structure on Utopia, that the payment structure actually goes up every year, that the payments increase. And so we have been able to say, let's take a bigger piece every year to at least keep the bleeding the same level, so the city payments aren't going up. But then we've also paid off all the UIA OPEX assessments that were made. And so now we're looking at other ways to, actually the final payments to be done in this fiscal year on that. But then we're looking at other ways to not just keep that flat, but to decrease it every year. So each year, even though we wish it were zero, it isn't practical yet to have it be zero, but we'll be able to kind of swing that the other direction. And we hope with all these partnerships and success, we'll get more and more aggressive every year with how much of that burden we can take on at Utopia. So anyways, any questions for me on the network updates or partnerships or any of that stuff?
Hey, Roger, this is Doug Hill at Murray. What is the schedule? What is the planned schedule for next year's fiscal year budget?
When we would bring the budget to you here?
Yes.
Usually we do that at our next meeting. That would be the April meeting. Is that, Laurie, are we?
Yes, that's the plan. Yes.
So that'd be our preliminary budget, and we do final approval in June.
So will there be, I assume there'll be some opportunity to ask questions at the next meeting regarding the budget. You'll be going through that, Laurie?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Any other questions?
I just had I had a couple of questions related, I guess. One is, I hear you going through and talking about, I mean, we've got all these new cities coming on, which is great, and we're seeing the growth in revenue and all that. But as we're starting, hopefully, this is the year that we go from pandemic to endemic, and I know that the pandemic had a large contribution to the number of subscribers with people being at home. Is there any change to the marketing strategy in some of the established communities or anything like that as this year changes in order to try to, I guess, address if there's any possible sort of trend that might come along with coming out of the pandemic or that kind of stuff? And then the second question is just, is there anything legislatively that we need to know?
You've heard from me too much on this, so I'm going to defer to Kim and maybe Josh on the legislative stuff. So.
Yeah, they don't want me to talk about legislative issues, so I'll just talk about the marketing issues first. Yeah, absolutely. We're changing. We have already started a campaign to really start targeting some of the new people that we see moving into Utah, because we have a footprint of a lot of people who know the Utopia brand, but what you see is when you have these new transplants coming in, the Utopia brand might not be nearly as well known. So we're really starting to target, because we've, like, in our surveys, we've really actually done really well with like the 40+ year olds, and we haven't necessarily done the greatest with the 25 to 40-year-olds. So we are absolutely developing a campaign and like strategies of how we hit, and hitting both of them actually. Like, so we have the people who've lived in Utah and like connecting Utah kind of campaign, and then we're kind of doing like a funny campaign to attract some of the youth. And but yeah, it's always about a pivot and seeing where we're going. I mean, we're even looking at TikTok campaigns. I mean, I know a lot of you are probably very active on the, TikTok and Reddit and all of these places. So we are really absolutely expanding our reach, because as we get to some of these penetration levels in some of the cities, you have to get a little more creative to get those additional customers as they come on. But absolutely, and you'll start seeing those new strategies come to life actually within the next few months.
Thank you.
I can speak just quickly to the legislative session. We've been following that closely. We haven't seen anything that's of concern. There've been a few proposals that get into just kind of administrative things, probably very similar to what you're seeing at cities. Just the legislature frequently wants to get into how we're doing what we do and think that they know better ways to do it than we do. But nothing that's been of concern or of any kind of material nature to our operations.
Thank you.
Great questions, Matt, and thank you for that, Kim and Josh. Any other questions or anything else? Okay, hearing nothing, is there a motion to adjourn?
Almost.
And a second?
Second, Alden?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, excellent. Well, everyone have a wonderful Valentine's Day, and we'll look forward to seeing you again here real soon. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.